Webster, we know the British have been caught over and over again. More than 75% of the terror attacks in Northern Ireland, and England, being staged by British Special Air Services, right. MI5 and MI6. They're now kicking this off again. And I said yesterday, in fact, at the start of the show before I'd seen the latest article, I said, will there be a drill around these two British soldiers being killed? A drill of the exact same thing happening. We already know that the security services and military stood down even as they saw them shooting and didn't fire back. That is now mainstream news. This is the Belfast Telegraph. Soldiers shot dead in Northern Ireland terror attack. The attack happened just 36 hours before Northern Ireland Chief Constable Sir Hugh Ord confirmed that undercover soldiers had been called in to carry out surveillance operations on dissidents, and amid warnings that the threat against his officers and military personnel was at its highest for almost a decade, that they were doing drills. Here's another one. This is out of the metro.co.uk. I guess this is the one in the Metro. Guards stood by as soldiers murdered. Armed security guards employed to protect the army barracks stood by as gunmen killed soldiers. Two soldiers were shot dead in the shooting at the barracks in Atrium, Northern Ireland, but armed security guards employed to protect the military base did not open fire on the terrorists, even while they stood over the injured men and fired further shots. The Times has reported. I want to bring up right now We Are Change Ireland, that has just done an absolutely fabulous job. Keith Bryan, or Byrne, you can tell me how I pronounce that, Keith, I always get it wrong, to tell us what's happening. He alerted us, I called him this morning, and then he alerted my producer that there were these other articles confirming what our suspicions. So, Keith, good to have you on from We Are Change Ireland.
Alex, it's a pleasure to be back on. I think last time round we were all upbeat about our victory against the European Constitution known as the Lisbon Treaty, but this time round it seems like things are a little different. So it's great to be on, and hello to Webster Tarpley too.
Hi there.
Okay, you're there in Ireland. Give us the breakdown on what's happening.
Well, Alex, I think there's a lot of ambiguity going on. People aren't quite sure what happened or what is meant to happen out of this. As we know that there were 6 people shot there on Saturday night. 2 of them were pronounced dead, and they were 2 soldiers of the British Army. There was 2 other soldiers hit with bullets, and there was 2 other civilians which were just delivering pizzas to the barracks. I actually did some investigation earlier, the way you were saying when I was speaking to Rob, and I came across some interesting things. The actual people who provide security on these bases is called NISGS, which is the Northern Ireland Security Guard Services, and they are normally armed with weapons, and they also patrol their bases. It was confirmed from an army source in the actual Australian news that it is regular procedure to fire back upon an enemy who is attacking. That is a regular procedure. These did not fire back. They stood down. And as you just said, they actually, when the shooters came over to, let's say, unload again another time, they actually stood back and they let that happen. And
now, the same thing happened last week in Pakistan with the attack on the cricket team. Perfect propaganda to outrage cricket fans, tens of millions worldwide. It's almost as big as soccer in many areas, don't know, in the U.S. And the same thing there. Mainstream news is saying, was it an inside job? Because the government, there's police right there, and the shooters shoot, calmly take their time, walk right by the police. Nothing's done. This stinks to high heaven. Webster, I mean, it's the same M.O. every time. Why does the establishment, we're not sure with these new cases, others have been confirmed, but why do they like to stage these shootings? As a pretext to bring in more troops?
Well, Britain, under the Labour governments of Tony Blair and now Gordon Brown, Britain has gone much further down the road to a police state than the U.S. even. Part of it is that the parties are controlled top down by the parliamentary whip system. The other thing is that you haven't had mass movements. You haven't had the kind of thing that you've seen in the U.S. And you don't have independent communications by and large, right? The large amount of television and radio broadcasting is controlled by the BBC. There is some commercial opposition, competition to that, but it doesn't amount to the kind of thing that you have in the U.S. of all ideological types. So I would say Gordon Brown, having started with this thing about bank bailouts, bank nationalizations, hundreds of billions and trillions of pounds now committed to the derivatives bailout and wanting to be the leader of this, right? Because that's what he is right now. Gordon Brown is the world leader in the bailout brigade. I think they're tightening the screws, and they're looking for pretexts for more and more police state controls inside.
That's right. Peaceably, the people of Ireland are moving to kick British forces out and get true sovereignty. And this violence is the best friend of the establishment. It's turned out most IRA was commanded by British intelligence, and they would threaten their underlings with death if they wouldn't go out and commit shootings and bombings. Going back to We Are Change Ireland, Keith Bryan. Keith, continue with other intel you've got from Ireland.
Well, basically, I was just scouring the newspapers. I was just, randomly Googling what the MOs would be, and that's how I came across this stand down, or these guards standing by. And the minute I saw that, I went, that does not sound right. I mean, they're guards, they're part of the security forces there. They would at least retaliate somehow, which they never did, and they stood down. And when I see that they stood down the second time after the bullets were fired, when the actual attackers came in for another round of shooting, that they actually still stood there. And when I saw that was very suspicious. And not only that, we have one gentleman called Patrick Mercer. He's a former infantry regiment commanding officer, and he is now chairman of the Commons Counter-Terrorism Subcommittee. And he went on to say, we have to question the efficacy of the guard force if it is not armed guards stood by as British soldiers are shot at Northern Ireland base, prepared to fire back on the enemy.
And let's expand on that. They then came over and stood over them and raked them with fire again.
Yeah, well, and this guy goes on to say, well, how are we meant to be a deterrent in the future if the terrorists know that we're not going to be shot at? And when you look at it, I mean, I'm sure that the people who were attacking the base knew that they were going to receive some sort of fireback or some sort of retaliation, but there was none.
Yeah, why would, that's a key point. Why would they waddle up after shooting them in the distance and then stand over them and shoot them again right up at the gate of the base, not thinking they'd be fired upon, knowing there was armed forces in there?
Yeah, not just that. They also were waiting there, Alex. So that, I mean, I'm actually reading Army reports here, and I don't know who the person is. It's coming from the Australian and various other news sources, but they're scrutinising the situation. They're saying, well, why was there no armed guards coming outside the base to collect the pizzas? That's normal protocol for people with weapons to come outside in case there was an actual attack. And there was none of that, and the security didn't do anything. And so you have these individuals just go up at random, by chance, catch these people collecting pizzas outside from Domino's, and they get sprayed with bullets. And one article goes on to say around 60 to 70 rounds were fired, so that's a substantial amount of ammunition being used against these 6 individuals, which, thank God, no more than 2 were killed.
Yeah, that's 2 1/3 banana clips sprayed into them. Just amazing. Well, is there a We Are Change website you want to plug? I know you guys put out a film as well and have really been making the news over there, confronting politicians. Any sites that you want to plug?
Yeah, there's several sites now, Alex. There's wiseupjournal.com. Anthony runs that one.
wiseupjournal.com?
Yeah. There's wearechangeIreland.org. There's also another website called wethepeople.ie. So there's a few other websites there, and there's links to others, and it's quite interesting what's going on recently, and it's reminiscent to what we once knew in the past, and it's kind of being brought into the present now. And I feel, Alex, if this goes on, basically there will be British troops back on the streets up there, because they're not going to stand by while British soldiers are being fired upon. And now they've killed a police officer last night too. Yeah, basically, what happened there was somebody threw a stone or a brick through some person's window. Maybe that was a tactic to draw the police in. But one police officer who has 22 years of experience in the police force up there, who must have seen quite a lot, he arrived up on the scene, and basically when the car came to a standstill, somebody come up from the rear window and just unloaded into the car, and I think he was shot in the head, and he died instantly. Well, it's on record. The British do most of this. They've been caught red-handed. We'll talk to you in the next few days as this develops. Thanks for your great information at We Are Change Ireland. Alex, take care of yourself, and bye to Webster. Bye-bye. All right.